Almost no one was there when Lucille Ball passed away in 1989. The singer, who had 44 million viewers on Monday nights, suffered from crippling loneliness in her last years. The only people in her mansions were the hired hands. Even her own children avoided her. One by one, even her well-known Hollywood pals vanished. What caused the national treasure of American comedy to fade into oblivion? Money, treachery, and a family secret ruined her life and all she had worked for. Heartbreak was the beginning of the Ball's life. Her father passed away from typhoid fever when she was only 3 years old. February 1915 was the month in question. It was just 27 years old when Lucille's younger brother was conceived by her mother. Her father's profession with the phone business had them constantly on the move. After residing in Montana, New York, and New Jersey, they finally settled in Michigan, where the disease manifested itself. Things started to go apart once her father went away. Her mom's depression made it so she couldn't look after the kids. While Lucille's little brother stayed with their grandparents, the girl was sent to live with her aunt. Loss and misfortune molded Lucille's childhood, she would later claim. For all time, she couldn't shake one memory from that period. The news of her father's death was broken by the sudden fall of a picture from the wall. Birds began to perk up at the kitchen window, and Lucille saw little gray sparrows. Even though it was an unusual detail, it etched itself deeply into her memory. Birds terrified her ever since that day. Even when she was an adult, she still found solace in images of her loved ones, whether they were real or imagined. She insisted on avoiding any hotel rooms decorated with birds, regardless of her fame. Even in death, she had that terror. Once calm returned, tragedy struck once more. The backyard was the scene of an accident when Lucille was 12 years old. A secure area was prepared by her stepfather so that she could practice shooting a .22 rifle. He played it safe by limiting the children's shooting to an empty area. However, an uninvited guest, a boy of just 8 years old, turned up. The youngster was shot as he abruptly stood up, just as another child was taking a shot. It was so severe that it paralyzed him for the rest of his life. After suing, the boy's family finally got what they wanted. The house, furniture, and insurance were all taken from Lucille's relatives. Guilty beyond measure, her grandpa never worked again. They had no choice but to flee the town. A single mishap, Lucille stated afterwards, destroyed their family life. Next, yet another tempest hit. Johnny DeVita, a neighborhood troublemaker, was 21 years old when Lucille Ball fell for him. Ball was just 14 years old. None of her mother's children liked it. In an audacious attempt to protect her daughter Lucille from a troubled future, she scrimped and saved enough to send her to a prestigious New York City theatrical school. Things went wrong. Even though they were in the same class, Bette Davis and Lucille's paths to success were completely different. Lucille failed miserably, whereas Davis flourished. There was no sugarcoating from the instructors. They told her straight out that she lacked the necessary skills. They allegedly even returned her mother's money, according to one account, who then informed Lucille that she lacked talent. Lucille subsequently confessed that the only thing she learned there was how to be afraid. However, she remained unbroken by that rejection. Sparks flew. Still focused on her goal and hell-bent on proving everyone incorrect, she returned to New York in 1928. Then she became ill with rheumatic fever, right when things were beginning to fall into place. It stung. She was so weak that she could not walk, much less perform, for 2 years. Those were the years that should have launched her career. But instead, she lay in bed and watched them pass. Quitting would have been the natural choice for most individuals. Not Lucille. After giving the teacher's advice some serious consideration, she decided not to give up, but rather to become even more determined. After she got well, she returned with renewed vigor. Simultaneously, she was hired by designer Hattie Carnegie to model. There was a lot of fuss. Lucille had potential, but Carnegie insisted on a big alteration. Her brown hair needed to be bleached blonde. That was Lucille's first move. It was a completely different kind of instruction from what she had received at acting school. She underwent a complete transformation, perfected her carriage in ball gowns, and absorbed all things pertaining to grace. Although her heart belonged on stage, she found that modeling allowed her to hone her stage presence, body language, and the art of silently captivating an audience. When she resumed her acting career, she put that polish to use. They were uninspiring. In the 1930A and 1940S, Lucille grabbed whatever she could. Slapstick comedy, supporting roles, and stars that are easy to forget. She appeared in more than 75 films, but she was never a major studio star. Despite her playful self-deprecation, she was dubbed Queen of the B-pluses by Hollywood. No matter how hard she tried, studios would cast her in roles that didn't match her flapper glamour girl comic sidekick persona. Despite this, she persisted, learning the ins and outs of the industry and ultimately developing the skills that would allow her to rule the screen on her own terms, rather than as someone else's star. On the set of the 1940 film Too Many Girls, Lucille Ball met D.C. Arnaz. They met when she was an established actress, and he was a young bandleader breaking into the Hollywood scene. Upon first meeting, a spark ignited. Straight up, D.C. approached her and wanted to know if she could Roomba. He proceeded to demonstrate a few movements and then offered to teach her, but only if she went out with him tonight. Lucy couldn't get enough. She later claimed she had never experienced such a rapid fall in love. D.C. had charisma, good looks, and boundless vitality. As soon as the sparks appeared, the film crew noticed. Some even began wagering on the couple's longevity. Lucille couldn't help but get swept away by the rapidity and intensity of it all. She confessed that he gave her the willies. The fact that he was untamed and unpredictable only served to captivate her. After filming concluded, they continued their conversation over costly long-distance conversations. Talking to him alone cost Lucille almost $29,000. They arrived in New York City in November 1940, a few months after that. Lucille was interviewing for a magazine as D.C. was performing on stage. Regarding their relationship, she stated in the interview that it would never work. Later that day, though, she showed up at his apartment, enraged, following a quarrel about D.C. seeing another woman. Unexpectedly, that argument came to a close. D.C. proposed to her. On that fateful night, barely 6 months after meeting, they hopped in a car and headed for Connecticut, where they secretly wed. A lot of people were astonished by their marriage. Hollywood was not a friend to mixed-race couples in the 1940s. Studios didn't believe a white woman and a Cuban man could work together, whether on or off camera. Years down the road, Lucille's plans to adapt her radio show for television ran into trouble with CBS after she insisted D.C. portray the role of her husband. They doubted the crowd would go along with it, but Lucille refused to budge. She later remarked that their elopement was her most audacious decision. They predicted it wouldn't be long-lived. They allowed it 6 months, she confessed. 6 weeks passed. Problems began to surface, though, soon after the honeymoon ended. As a band, D.C. did a lot of traveling. Both Lucille and he were up bright and early for work, but he stayed late to play shows. Little did their schedules intersect. The more fundamental problems arose thereafter. D.C. came from a culture that didn't really consider infidelity to be a sin. When he was 12 years old, his father took him to a brothel. Even though Lucille felt hurt, he insisted that sleeping around didn't indicate he wasn't emotionally dedicated to her. Their marriage began to show signs of strain as his drinking habit worsened. People had cautioned her even before they were married. Desi was well known among ladies around the country. Lucille reached her breaking point in 1944, after only 4 years. A divorce petition was lodged against her. They fought constantly and loudly. They yelled a lot when Lucy was a kid, as her daughter Lucy would later recall. Lucille and Desi still couldn't keep themselves apart, even after the paperwork was filed. They reconciled in what some described as an explosive reunion. They would break up and try again more than once. A pattern was formed. There was still one more notion they had. Having to work independently drove a wedge between them. Perhaps they could stay united if they worked together. In 1950, CBS was interested in adapting My Favorite Husband Lucille Ball's hit radio program into a television series. But Lucy caught them off guard. If Desi Arnaz, who plays her spouse on the program, could also play him in real life, she might consider it. Many on the network were opposed to the plan. Desi lived in Cuba. He spoke with a robust accent. They also doubted that American audiences would embrace him as the patriotic spouse of a woman from the United States. During that period, inter re, although racial marriages were taboo in many U.S. states and rarely featured on television, Lucy and Desi proved they could work together by putting together a live stage act. They went on a cross-country tour, performing comedic and musical numbers, which was well received by audiences and critics alike. The show's chemistry was palpable, and CBS eventually agreed to cast Desi in it. The show's production was a slog, as CBS insisted on filming it in New York, the hub for television production, but Lucy was adamant about staying in Hollywood. That decision altered television indefinitely. Desi collaborated with producer Jess Oppenheimer to pioneer a new method of filming in front of a live studio audience, using 3 simultaneous cameras. That was a gamble. They needed to choose a studio that could accommodate both the safety regulations and the number of viewers. Finally, with CBS's assistance, they located one in Hollywood and had it repaired. A huge impact was made by this filming technique. It allowed actors to perform scenes non-stop, like in a play, rather than having to stop and start each time. The audience's genuine laughs and comments were also filmed. Furthermore, Desi was adamant that they forego the fuzzy tape that was standard at the time in favor of high-quality 35mm film. That choice was just brilliant. Desilu, Lucy and Desi's company took a portion of the profits since they owned the episodes. I Love Lucy was one of the first major syndication successes, since the episodes could be re-aired for decades due to the high-quality filming. The program ran into yet another problem in 1952. Their second kid was on the way, and Lucy became pregnant. Showing or simply mentioning pregnancy on television was deemed unacceptable at the time. While waiting for a narrative to begin, he inquired outside Lucille and Desi's residence. Lucille Ball named Red was a massive red headline that appeared in the Los Angeles Herald-Express that very day. Quickly, it caught the attention of other publications. Out of nowhere, the most popular TV show in America's history had its star accused of being a communist. This wasn't idle chatter. Having ties to communists may spell disaster in those days. As a result, Lucille began incorporating her TV character into her performances through the use of facial expressions and jokes. Nothing changed. Both the reviews and her health were negatively affected by the stress. The show had to go dark on occasion because she was unwell. After that, she passed out on stage one April night. They attempted to put the event on hold so she could get better, but the union representing the musicians said they needed to be paid nevertheless. After only 171 performances, the show ceased permanently due to the hefty costs. Hit a slump in her professional life, and she was also having trouble at home. Desi Jr. Lucille's adolescent son began dating actress Patty Duke in 1970. Lucille had no love for Patty, who was 23 years old. Desi and her mother were married when she was 6 years younger than him. Today, however, she was enraged at her son's connection. He was served severe ultimatums by her.